Did you know that some of the most popular games out there actually suck? Well, at least they did to me based on my first impressions. Steam is one of the best gaming platforms known to mankind. And one of the things that makes it so great is their fantastic refund policy that states that if someone buys a game and plays it for less than 2 hours, they can refund it, no questions asked. I thought it'd be really cool to make a series based on the refund premise where I play games for less than 2 hours and see if I feel like they've impressed me enough to keep playing or bored me to the point of wanting a refund. So today we're going to talk about every game that I refunded in 2025 and talk about why I refunded them. Let's jump in.
Number 1. Hollow Knight.
Alright, yes I know, the fact that I refunded Hollow Knight is probably nothing short of blasphemy, but before you immediately click off the video, let me explain myself. Don't get me wrong, playing Hollow Knight for the first 2 hours made me realize that the game is nothing short of an artistic masterpiece. The environments, visuals, sound design, and characters were top-notch. It was truly an artistic marvel to experience. What I unfortunately couldn't get past though is how much time I felt was wasted from the needless backtracking, frustrating deaths, and directionless exploration. I get that for some this is a sticking point, and I understand that half the fun of some of these games is figuring things out and exploring, discovering new things in a vast world, all that good stuff. But when looking strictly at first impressions, this aspect of the game made it extremely frustrating for me. I wanted to see more of the game and see what it had to offer, but instead I was stuck wandering until eventually meeting a dead end, turning around, spending another 15 minutes going the other direction just to meet yet another dead end. It was a vicious cycle of wasted time. I also never figured out that you could look down prior to jumping down to another portion of the map by holding down on the control stick, so I kept falling into spike traps, boiling lakes, or enemies because I just had to cross my fingers and pray that I didn't land somewhere that would be immediately dangerous. There were also some super frustrating enemies that I encountered, especially these stupid exploding jellyfish that seemed impossible to dodge that I died to like 5 too many times. Listen, I'm not opposed to difficult combat or getting good. In fact, the Souls games are some of my favorite games ever for that very reason, but some of these enemies felt straight up unfair at times instead of merely requiring a bit of skill to conquer. Again, I can see why Hollow Knight is considered a masterpiece by many, but after my first 2 hours, it was a lot of frustration due to what felt like needless backtracking, roadblocks, directionlessness, and unfair enemies.
Number 2. Another Crab's Treasure.
Another Crab's Treasure was a game that I really wanted to like. I really did, and I tried hard to like it. Like I just mentioned, I mean, the Souls games are some of my favorite games in all of gaming history, but if I'm being honest, this one felt a bit like a cheap copy to me. I'm not saying that because I felt like the devs didn't work hard or were lazy and tried to clone the exact Souls formula. It was kind of the opposite. When I read that the game was a Souls-like, I was ecstatic to jump in and find one amazing weapon after the next, upgrade those weapons incrementally, and feel that gradual power spike, and feel triumphant when I finally won a difficult boss fight. I never really got there though. The only weapon I found was this little fork that you can use to poke enemies to death, and I don't know, it just didn't seem satisfying. Also, from what I gathered from my first 2 hours, the weapon wasn't even upgradable. You just kind of were stuck with this dumb fork. In FromSoft Souls games, not only are you able to upgrade weapons very early on, but you also find a ton of them, and each one feels different to play with, and I don't know, that's one of the things that makes the game so addicting for me. I'm not even sure if you're able to find any other weapons other than the fork in this game. I know it had that shell system, but that just wasn't the same. The combat also felt a bit more clunky than I would have expected from a Souls-like, and even though the things like the silly story, the cool environment, stuff like that made me appreciate the game, it just didn't scratch that Souls itch like I thought it would. Maybe if I went into another Crab's Treasure with a different mindset and tried to look at it as an adventure platformer or something like that rather than a Souls-like, I would have appreciated it more. But as far as it stands after my first 2 hours, I just was not interested or having enough fun to be able to keep it in my Steam library.
Number 3. Cataclismo.
Alright, so Cataclismo is a much lesser known indie title that I tried at the suggestion of one of my viewers, and while I was excited to try it, I made one fatal mistake. See, I grew up as a console gamer, and only recently within the last few years transitioned to being a PC gamer. So as such, the RTS and colony simulation genres were never really in my gaming library. And this game was very heavy on the RTS, colony sim, and base building categories. I think the premise for the game is really interesting. I just personally didn't have much experience or nostalgia for the genre. And I mean, call me dumb, but I feel like the game was just overall too complicated for me, and really the only aspect of the game that I did enjoy was the base building tower defense parts, and it seems like that was only a tiny sliver of what the game was all about. I did really like the graphics and art style in this one, and I can tell that the devs worked really hard on making it the best they could, but again, as primarily an RTS, the gameplay was just not for me in the least bit.
Number 4. The Binding of Isaac.
Okay, so I released the review for The Binding of Isaac in 2026, but I played and refunded it in 2025, so I'm including it here. I know this one may also cause an outcry from you people watching out there, but I didn't care much for The Binding of Isaac. I actually think that this is the game with the lowest score I've given during one of my reviews. I can appreciate that the game essentially was a blueprint for modern roguelikes and was extremely innovative for its time way back in 2011, but after playing more modern roguelikes like Hades, Slay the Spire, Risk of Rain 2, and so on, The Binding of Isaac just kinda pales in comparison. I really wanted to like this game because I've quickly realized that roguelikes are probably some of my favorite genres, but this one specifically just didn't feel satisfying to play. I didn't really feel like the upgrades were particularly exciting or game-changing, and I never really felt like I was able to make much progress from one run to the next, due to never really being able to figure out what the items were even supposed to do. The items you would pick up had no description or explanation, and in most cases, you would typically just grab something and try to figure out what it did. I mean, I guess it's possible that I'd get to the point after a couple hours where I finally felt like I could understand what was going on and how to get stronger each run, but that certainly didn't happen during the first 2 hours of gameplay for me. Also, not as big of a deal, but I really didn't care much for the sound design, as the music was nothing to write home about, and the sound effects that the enemies would make very quickly got on my nerves. Furthermore, while I typically love dark themes and stories in video games, this one just didn't do it for me. It almost felt more as if it was striving to be straight up gross rather than dark by having piles of poop everywhere in the map, headless babies as enemies, and so much random blood, including enemies that would shoot you with their blood lasers from their eyes. Maybe I'm being soft, but listen, I'm an ER nurse by profession, and I deal with blood, poop, a ton of other bodily fluids on the daily. It's not that I can't handle it or I'm bothered by it, it just simply seemed really weird. I don't know, maybe if I figured out what the story in the game was trying to tell, it would all make a little bit more sense and not just seem gross just for the sake of being gross, but from the first 2 hours, I just wasn't a fan of it. All that to say, I can appreciate The Binding of Isaac for what it is, I just didn't think it was any fun, or particularly enjoyable to play.
Number 5. Shapez 2.
Alright, last but not least, I was really disappointed by Shapez 2, not necessarily by the game itself, but by the fact that I didn't like it like I thought I would. I bought Shapez 2 right after an extremely long stint of addiction that I had to Satisfactory. I was hoping it would scratch that factory building, production line, and automation itch that I had after I stopped playing that goat of a game. As I dove into the first 2 hours though, I was just not having as much fun as I had originally thought that I would have been. It felt more tedious than it did exciting or fun. In Satisfactory, I felt that I was constantly building one production line to become bigger and better with every upgrade I received. I would start with just one miner and one conveyor line going into one smelter, and after upgrading the miner, I was able to split it to 3 conveyors and even faster conveyors with better efficiency. I don't know, I guess what I'm saying is I love this feeling of starting out small and being able to build off that to improve it into something grand. In this game though, I pretty quickly realized that that's just not how Shapez 2 works. I found myself constantly having to tear down huge sections of the factory that I had just worked on, rather than building off of each section to expand and create new sections. This oftentimes felt more like a puzzle game to me than a factory simulation / automation game, and while there were some puzzle aspects to Satisfactory as well, it was completely different. I guess all that to say, it just wasn't what I thought it would be or what I wanted it to be after coming off of Satisfactory. I will say that when I played the game it was in early access, so it's very possible that it could be greatly improved upon by now, but based on what I experienced from my first 2 hours back in 2025, I just couldn't justify keeping it in my Steam library. All that to say, video games are great, but there's just way too many to choose from. I'm thankful for Steam and their refund policy that allows me to return something that I'm just not enjoying. But then again, some games just aren't for everyone, and the 5 games that we talked about today were just that for me. Again, this doesn't mean that I think that these are bad games, just that they're bad for me personally. Or at least they were, just based off of the first impressions that I got from playing for less than 2 hours. So hey, if you think this whole Steam Refund review idea is interesting, check out my page. I post one of these reviews weekly, and I hope that you'll find my opinions and experience with these games valuable. Or maybe just entertaining. Leave a comment down below and tell me about a game that you refunded that shocked other gamers, and if you enjoyed the video, like it, hit that subscribe button, if you're especially cool, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Okay, love you, bye.